Now, last month when I was doing my roundup podcast of the month of March, I discussed the situation in Israel in a lot of depth. So, if anyone wants to know what's the background of what's going on in Israel, I suggest you go back to last month's podcast and listen to what I said there. But for this month, I'm just going to quickly go over the latest developments in the disputes that are happening over the new power balance that will emerge from Israel's last election, which happened earlier this year. Now, the last election, which was Israel's third national election in the space of 12 months, did not bring about a clear situation. Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party had the most votes, but they fell short of a majority. Now, on the other side, we had Benny Gantz, and leader of the Blue and White bloc. It was a leftist bloc, which the bloc itself came second in the elections, but was far behind Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud-led right-wing bloc. Nonetheless, Netanyahu could not secure enough support from smaller parties such as the party of Avigdor Lieberman, who is a ultra secularist nationalist Israeli leader. You would expect that Lieberman would have supported Netanyahu, being that they're both right wing, but Lieberman seemed more keen to play kingmaker and see Benny Gantz become the leader of Israel. So we had a situation where it looked very much like Netanyahu's days were over, especially considering that he was facing trial for corruption, but that trial has been delayed because of the coronavirus pandemic. So it's bought him a bit of time. But lo and behold, as a shock to everyone, Benny Gantz last month decided to take the position of the Israeli parliament speaker, albeit temporarily. But it showed signs that Benny Gantz was now willing to work with Benjamin Netanyahu to form some kind of grand coalition to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. That at least seemed to be the excuse that was being given in the media. So this was a huge betrayal of Benny Gantz's allies in the Blue and White bloc. And since then, Benny Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu have been negotiating ways that they can share power within this grand coalition that they're trying to form. And one way that they could do this is through a rotational presidency, which I believe has been, rotational leadership, because we're discussing the position of Prime Minister here. So there's going to be a rotational leadership between Benny Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu, with one leader doing the first 2 years and another leader doing the next 2 years. Another concession that the Gantz's side has made demands on is a leading role rather, in the Israeli justice system. At the same time, one red line that Benjamin Netanyahu has put forward is Benny Gantz's support for Netanyahu's plans to annex parts of the Palestinian West Bank. So it seems that, at least from what we're being told in the media, these two sides have made agreements on these issues, and the Israeli court has approved that Benjamin Netanyahu can step forward and form a new government, even though he is facing trial for corruption. So Netanyahu has once again survived. He's been given the green light to form a government, and now he has Benny Gantz, the leader of the Israeli opposition, supporting him. However, being that Gantz pretty much betrayed the Israeli left wing, we're seeing other left-wing leaders emerge, such as Yair Lapid, who has now turned against Benny Gantz and is now taking his place as the leader of the Israeli opposition. And at the same time, Yair Lapid has basically come out and said that he does not want to see Gantz become Israel's new prime minister. So even though we have Gantz and Lapid, both left-wing leaders, Lapid has been so enraged by Gantz's betrayal of the blue and white bloc that Lapid would rather see Netanyahu remain as prime minister of Israel for the time being. Pretty much the same way that Avigdor Lieberman, even though he is right-wing, has so many differences and so much personal problems with Netanyahu that he would rather see a left-wing leader become the Prime Minister of Israel rather than Netanyahu. In fact, Avigdor Lieberman, the situation being that it is, with Gantz and Netanyahu joining forces, he was hoping to play the role of kingmaker in this election, but now he's pretty much been completely sidelined. And one way that he's tried to remain relevant is that shortly before the Israeli courts approved Netanyahu to form a new government, Lieberman came out, he interpreted one of Netanyahu's press conferences as being an indication that Netanyahu was not interested in a coalition and that Netanyahu was prepared to go to a fourth election. And Lieberman came out and announced himself as a prime ministry candidate for the next elections, which officially has not been declared even. So Avigdor Lieberman, even though he's been sidelined by this situation, is showing signs that he's still very eager to be involved in the game, and he will be very outspoken against any kind of government led by Netanyahu in the future, even though his party only has 7 out of 120 seats in the Israeli parliament.